Chapter 10. Major FOMO. Barry jumped back and flipped on the lights. There was nothing. No sword. Nothing. He gasped for breath, scanning his room for any sign of something out of place. For someone who could have been wielding the sword that he'd been sure that was there just seconds ago. But he was alone. Relief washed over him. It was just a nightmare. He slumped back on his bed, trying to slow his racing heart. And that's when he saw it, the slash marks in the ceiling. His heart jumped into his throat. The gouges were still. So, not a dream then. He stood up and reached for the slash marks again, hoping that he was seeing things. But the gouges were rough beneath his fingertips. They really were real. Cautiously, Barry checked under his bed once more. Deep slashes had been gouged into the wooden floorboards there too. Splinters and specks of wood stuck out of the gashes. He studied them, unable to believe his eyes. "This can't be happening," he whispered. The slashes looked exactly like the ones he'd discovered on the pirate ship in the captain's cabin. Those marks had led him to the secret compartment where he had discovered the hook and the letter. Oh no, the hook! Barry scrambled over to his backpack. A gash had been slashed into its side. The rough fabric, which he had thought of as indestructible, gaped open. It was almost like someone, or something, had been searching his room for the hook. He reached inside, certain that the hook had been taken, but it was still nestled in there, along with the parchment letter. His heart rate slowed, but only slightly. Why didn't they take it? Barry must have woken up and surprised them. That was the only explanation. That's why they hid under his bed. He pulled the hook out and stroked it, remembering how amazing yesterday had been. He never wanted it to end. He never wanted to grow up. He had to keep this hook at all costs. He studied the slashes over his bed and the gash in his backpack. Had someone really been in his room looking for the hook? He could think of only one person who would want it back. One person who could make those marks on the ceiling and floor. Captain Hook. Barry felt the cold metal of the rusty hook running his fingers to the sharp tip. "But I need this," he whispered. "You can't have it back. I can't grow up." "No, you're not allowed to go to the concert tonight," Mom said, downing her usual supersized mug of morning coffee. "Wait, what? What do you mean?" Barry demanded. Mr. Bates had excused him from homework for the rest of the school year. He wasn't in trouble, at least any that he knew about. He wasn't currently grounded, which was basically a minor miracle since he tended to get grounded a lot. There was zero reason that he shouldn't be allowed to go to the concert. They'd already given permission and bought the tickets for him. "Exactly what I said," Mom repeated in a tired voice. "You can't go tonight." "But why?" Barry gasped. "You bought that ticket for my birthday and I—" The words dried up in his throat. The birthday that never happened because of his wish. "For starters, you're too young for concerts," Mom said, pouring a fresh cup of coffee and sipping it black. "I spoke to your father last night. We both agreed. You would need adult supervision and neither of us can go. Also, it would end way past your curfew. We never should have bought you the ticket." "But everyone else is going," Barry said. "Michael's and John's parents gave them permission. It's our favorite band. We've been looking forward to it for months." Mom let out a weary sigh and set her empty mug in the sink. "That's their parents," she said, spouting one of her favorite parenting lines. "We're your parents. We have different rules in this house. We've decided to give your ticket to Rita." "No way!" Barry gasped. "Why does she get to go?" Rita shot him a snarky look from the kitchen table, where she was furiously finishing her homework. Yeah, Goober, she said, stabbing her pen in the air to emphasize her words. Different rules means I get to go to the concert tonight. Barry couldn't believe the unfairness. His mouth dropped open in outrage. But why does Rita get to go? He asked again in a whiny voice. He hated sounding like a little kid, but he couldn't help it. That's totally unfair. It's my ticket. She can't have it because she's all grown up, Mom replied, rubbing her tired eyes. She's 16. She can drive, and she gets a later curfew. Plus, it's not your ticket. Your father and I paid for it. But she can give me a ride, Barry said, thinking fast. We'll get another ticket so we can both go. And she can supervise me. She's babysat me before. No way, Goober, Rita said. I need a night off from you and your lame friends. Plus, the concert is totally sold out. Brooke told me. No way can we score another ticket. Dad walked into the kitchen with his messenger bag slung over his shoulder. He was ready for work. He met Barry's eyes. Son, I'm sorry, but you're just too young for concerts, he said, patting Barry's shoulder. Don't argue with your mother. You know better than that. But I really wanted to go, Barry said, blinking back angry tears. He couldn't stand how unfair it all was. I can't believe you're letting Rita go instead of me. They're my favorite band. She doesn't even like them that much. All my friends are going, and half my class. Dad gave him a sympathetic look. If your friends all jumped off a cliff, would you jump too? Just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean you should too. He chuckled at his own lame dad joke. Barry just scowled back, feeling even worse. This was yet another lame parenting line that he'd heard a gazillion times before. Going to a fun concert was not the same thing as jumping off a cliff. It made 0 sense. But I'm gonna miss out, Barry said, imagining Michael and John at the concert without him, jumping around and singing along. Then his father perked up. Oh, I know, Dad said. How about I take you to the Children's Museum instead? That's more age appropriate. Yes, that's a fantastic idea, Mom said with a nod. It's also educational. Barry cringed at that word. He stared at them both in horror. They were just making it worse. Why did his father think that museums were the answer to every single life problem? And not just any museum, the Children's Museum. That was like the most boring place in existence. Not to mention it was for snotty little kids who were still in diapers. At least the Maritime Museum had a pirate ship and other semi-cool stuff. He felt his heart sinking. The Lost Boys were his absolute favorite band. He knew every song by heart. The chorus from his favorite song, Neverland, ran through his head. It played on the radio constantly. The sky's the limit. Never grow up, never get older. Second star to the right and straight on till morning. He'd been looking forward to going to the show with his friends for so long. He couldn't believe he was going to miss it. He studied his parents' faces for any glimmer of hope that their resolve was weakening and he could convince them. But they looked firm. He could tell from experience. They weren't going to change their minds. Not once. They'd made them up like this. Feeling defeated, Barry followed Rita out the door, grabbing his backpack with a gash in the side. It was time for school. They climbed into the car, and he slumped in the back seat. He was dreading telling Michael and John the news that he couldn't go. They did everything together. Enjoy the Kitty Museum, Goober, Rita smirked as if reading his mind. Meanwhile, I'll be rocking out with my friends. She made the rock out symbol with her hands and fired up Neverland. The song blared from the speakers, making Barry feel even worse, which he hadn't thought possible. You don't gotta rub it in, Barry mumbled, feeling like a dagger had been plunged into his heart. Rita glanced in the rearview mirror. He could tell she wanted to do just that, but then she spotted the desolate expression on his face and softened. "Hey, cheer up," she said. "I'll send you vids from the show." But he didn't want videos. He wanted to be there with his friends and the cool kids. He couldn't believe that Michael and John were going to see the Lost Boys without him. His mother's words ran through his head again. "You're too young for concerts." It just wasn't fair. He reached into his backpack, through the gash in the side, feeling the outline of the hook. He was sure that the wish had caused this to happen. That was the only possible explanation for why his parents would suddenly decide that he was too young for a concert. For the first time, as he slumped in the back seat listening to his favorite song, he started to wonder if not growing up was such a good idea after all. The Children's Museum was even worse than he expected. All the exhibits were overrun with snotty little kids wired on sugar or adrenaline, or maybe both. They careened around the museum like drunken sailors, bumping into each other, squealing in shrill voices, and smearing their sticky hands everywhere. Barry was definitely the oldest kid there. When he was younger, he'd loved this museum, especially the ocean exhibit, where they let the kids pick up starfish. But now, as he surveyed the colorful geometric designs and oversized signs, he felt like he didn't belong. "I should be at the concert with my friends," he thought glumly, "not stuck here with these little brats." "Go have fun with the other kids," Mom said, oblivious to his sour mood. Her eyes had that glazed-over look. "I'll be over here if you need anything." She joined a gaggle of parents clustered by the hard plastic chairs. They all seemed absorbed in their phones, as if they'd rather be anywhere else. Barry could relate. He felt the exact same way. He meandered through the museum, looking for a group of kids that he could join. But none of them looked fun. He was a few years older than everyone there. Buzz, buzz. His phone vibrated in his pocket, and he fished it out, opening to his messages. He hit play on a video Michael had sent him. The screen flooded with an image of John up close, with the brightly lit stage in the background. "Wish you were here," John yelled before tilting the lens toward the stage, right as the band launched into Second Star. Colorful lights swirled around while backup dancers rocked out. Star-shaped spotlights roved over the packed crowd, who were bouncing around and looked like they were having the time of their lives. "You're the second star I see every night, but of all the stars, the brightest light," the trio sang in perfect harmony while playing their instruments. "Never stop flying, never grow up. Dreams are forever, and childhood doesn't stop. Barry felt his mouth go dry. Envy rose up in him like a poisonous tide. Rita sent him a video too, as promised. She was there with Brooke and Todd. It seemed like her painstaking plans to get Todd's attention had worked. Todd had his arms wrapped around Rita. Yuck, Barry thought, imagining them making out during the show. Barry played and then replayed the videos over and over, feeling worse every time he watched them. Suddenly, staying a kid didn't seem so fun after all. He missed his friends. He had missed the concert. Did I make a huge mistake? He wandered over to the ocean exhibit, his former favorite, passing through a shadowy corridor painted blue and designed to emulate the sensation of being underwater. Facts about undersea life were painted across the walls in colorful script, along with fanciful sea images. He reached the end of the corridor. Strangely, the exhibit was dark, except for the open tank of water in the middle. Eerie blue light filtered through the salt water, casting strange rippling shadows across the walls and ceiling. It really did feel like being underwater. It was almost deserted. This was strange. In the past, there had always been dozens of little kids running around the exhibit, splashing in the water and harassing the starfish. For half a second, Barry felt relieved to have the room to himself, but then he heard it behind him. Thump, thump. Barry tensed. He whipped around, but he was completely, utterly alone. He strained his ears. The room was eerily silent, aside from the burbling of the tank. He felt cold suddenly and shivered in his light t-shirt. But museums were usually kept on the colder side, weren't they? Barry approached the tank, wrapping his arms around his chest. He peered down into the water, but only harmless starfish lay on the sand, clustered around the coral reef. He reached his fingers in and stroked one of them, feeling the bumpy surface. This exhibit had always soothed him, ever since he was a little kid. While he was scared of the ocean, this felt contained and safe. He could see the bottom. The water was clear. It contained only harmless creatures. Then, suddenly, an eerie voice reverberated out of the water. "Scurvy brat!" the voice gurgled, sounding deeply furious. "You're not the first little boy to take something from me that doesn't belong to you, but you will be the last."